A luxury car pulls into a quiet, reserved parking space downtown. But what starts as an ordinary morning quickly takes a sharp turn when a police cruiser slows down, and the man inside doesn't like what he sees. It was a clear Tuesday morning, and the city hadn't fully awakened yet. Steam curled lazily from the grates along the sidewalks, and shopkeepers were just beginning to roll up their shutters. In the middle of the business district, surrounded by mirror-glass buildings and valet-only coffee shops, a sleek black Audi R8 turned a quiet corner and eased into a reserved parking space. The engine purred once before going still. The driver's door clicked open, and out stepped a young man in crisp sneakers, fitted slacks, and a dark navy jacket. He was tall, confident, and moved with calm precision. Every motion unhurried, intentional, quiet. Jaden Brooks locked the car and glanced at the sign in front of the space. Reserve permit only. He had the permit. It was tucked neatly in the corner of his windshield. The spot was his, a small reward for big accomplishments, though you wouldn't know by looking. He tugged his backpack over one shoulder, pulled out his phone, checked the time, and nodded to himself. He was early, better that than late. Just as he turned to head toward the revolving glass doors of the building behind him, he heard the slow hum of a vehicle approaching from behind. He didn't turn around, not at first, but something in the rhythm of that engine sounded deliberate. Across the street, a black and white police cruiser rolled to a slow crawl. The officer inside wasn't using his siren. No lights, no honking, just steady, calculated movement, like a lion watching its prey from the edge of the tall grass. Jaden felt it before he saw it. The presence, the surveillance. He didn't have to guess. He'd been here before. The cruiser stopped completely, just a few feet behind Jaden's car. The engine idled. Inside, the officer adjusted something, maybe the radio, maybe the dash cam, but he didn't get out. Instead, he sat there, hand resting on the steering wheel, eyes narrowed, just watching. Jaden didn't stare back. He simply exhaled, turned around slowly, and stood with his hands visible at his sides. His gaze was calm but firm, as if to say, "We don't have to do this today." The officer didn't move. For a moment, neither of them did. Jaden didn't fit the scene, not in the eyes of people who didn't know better. He was young, black, and driving a car that cost more than most people's yearly salaries. The parking space? Right in front of a prestigious downtown executive building. The mix didn't sit well with certain eyes, and this officer's eyes were locked on him, like he'd discovered a glitch in the Matrix. Jaden turned back around and reached for his messenger bag. He moved slowly with purpose and unzipped it in full view. From inside, he pulled out a document folder, then a thin envelope marked with an official seal. He wasn't planning on using it now. It was meant for someone inside the building, but he wanted it close, just in case. He slipped it into the outside pocket of the bag, zipped it up again, and resumed his walk toward the front doors. That's when he heard the unmistakable sound of a car, door creaking open behind him. He paused. A moment later, a voice rang out, sharp, commanding, clipped. "Excuse me, sir. Need a moment of your time." Jaden turned. The officer had stepped out. He was stocky, in his mid-40s, with a faded buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses. His hand rested casually near his hip. Not threatening, but close enough to remind anyone who was watching that he was the one in control. Jaden gave a small nod. "Morning, officer," he said. The cop didn't respond to the greeting. His eyes traveled between Jaden, the Audi, and the reserve sign. "You parked this vehicle here?" he asked. Jaden nodded again. "Yes, sir. I have a permit." He motioned toward the windshield. The officer didn't look. "Can I see your license and registration?" Jaden blinked but didn't argue. He pulled out his wallet, handed over his ID, then retrieved the car's registration from a glove box. Everything was in order. The officer took them, stepped back, and studied the information longer than necessary. "You work in this building?" he asked, without looking up. "No," Jaden said calmly. "You meeting someone?" "Yes." "Who?" Jaden hesitated for a split second. "General Horace Langston." That name landed with a dull thud, like a heavy book dropped on a quiet desk. The officer didn't react. Not visibly, but Jaden could tell it registered. Still, the man kept his tone neutral. "Military man?" "Yes," Jaden replied. "Retired. I'm one of his scholarship cadets." The officer squinted, still holding the documents. "That right?" Jaden didn't answer. He didn't need to. The weight of his silence filled the space between them. A woman passing by with a coffee paused slightly. She looked at the scene unfolding. The expensive car, the uniformed cop, the silent teen standing in full view. Then kept walking, but not before taking a glance over her shoulder. A small seed had been planted. Someone was watching now. The officer turned toward the car, walked a slow circle around it, then returned to Jaden. "Lot of kids out here stealing rides. You know that?" Jaden looked him in the eye. "I do." The officer narrowed his eyes, looking for a reaction. He didn't get one. "Where'd you get this car?" he asked. "It was awarded through the Valor Cadet Program." Jaden answered. "Same organization that secured this parking spot." The officer raised an eyebrow. "That's so." He held up the registration and checked the name again. Jaden Brooks. It matched. Every detail matched. But something in the officer's face said he still wasn't convinced. Jaden remained quiet. He wasn't going to explain more than necessary. He knew that tone, that doubt, that challenge, not spoken, but carried in posture and pauses. It wasn't about the car. It was about control. From a distance, a young man in a business suit slowed down as he passed. He glanced over, took in the scene, then pulled out his phone. Not obviously, just subtly. Others nearby noticed too. It was starting. Jaden saw it happening, but he didn't let it change his posture. His heart beat steady. He knew how to breathe through moments like this. His mentor had told him once, "Don't waste energy proving you belong. Let the facts speak." He had never forgotten it. The officer stepped back slightly, radioed something in under his breath, and then leaned against a cruiser door, as if deciding his next move. Jaden didn't move. He simply stood, still invisible, not afraid, not provoked. The air was shifting. What started as a quiet, almost forgettable interaction in a sleepy downtown block now carried the weight of a spotlight. Not one created by sirens or media, but by the silent tension of public eyes. The officer didn't miss it. He had patrolled this district for years and knew when a situation was starting to draw attention. Still, his instincts didn't tell him to back off. They told him to lean in. "Stand right there," the officer said, more command than request. He didn't wait for confirmation. His gaze flicked again to the Audi, then to Jaden's face. "So, you say this car was awarded through some cadet program?" "Yes, sir," Jaden answered calmly. "Valor Cadet Program." "Never heard of it," the officer replied, as if that alone discredited its legitimacy. "Sounds made up?" Jaden said nothing. He wasn't here to educate a skeptical man in uniform about a nationally recognized military scholarship. The paperwork was real. His registration, license, insurance, ID, all valid. He knew that. The officer probably knew it too. But knowing wasn't always enough. "Mind popping the trunk?" the officer asked suddenly. Jaden hesitated. Not out of fear, but principle. "Is there a reason?" "Yeah," the cop said, taking a step closer. I want to make sure there's nothing in there that shouldn't be. You know how it is. Some folks borrow cars that don't belong to them. It's registered to me. You've seen that. Doesn't mean someone didn't hand it off to you for something else. Jaden exhaled slowly. Then, without a word, he walked back to the car, unlocked it with chirp, and pressed the trunk release. The hatch popped open smoothly, revealing nothing more than a neatly packed duffel bag and a garment cover hanging flat. The officer stepped forward and began inspecting, carefully, methodically, perhaps even hoping to find something out of place. He unzipped the duffel halfway, saw books, pressed uniforms, toiletries, and zippered it back up. Then he lifted the garment cover slightly, revealing the edge of a clean cadet blazer with rank insignia. He ran a finger across it, then stepped back. "Military, huh?" he muttered. Jaden nodded from a distance. "Yes, sir. Active. Cadet. Naval Academy, bound." The officer paused, then walked back around, eyeing Jaden from head to toe again, his tone still laced with doubt. "You sure this isn't your older brother's car?" "I'm an only child," Jaden replied, still respectful. "And again, it's registered to me." More people had started to gather, not in crowds, but in small, curious clumps. Two baristas from the corner cafe had stepped outside to take a break and were quietly observing the exchange. A young couple with iced coffees paused at a streetlight and lingered a bit longer than necessary. The cop noticed them, and they noticed him noticing. "You been in trouble before?" the officer asked. "No," Jaden replied. "No tickets? No priors?" "No, sir. Ever been stopped in a car like this before?" Jaden allowed himself a faint smile. "You mean nice cars, officer?" The cop's brow furrowed. "Don't get smart. Wasn't trying to be. Just answering your question." The officer looked at the documents again, as if willing them to betray the calm young man in front of him. But they didn't. Every detail matched. Every box was ticked. The only thing left was a suspicion, the kind that couldn't be measured or proven, but lingered like fog in the space between reality and bias. A low voice came from behind the officer. "That's Jaden, right?" It was one of the baristas, speaking softly to her coworker. "He's the kid from the fundraiser last year, the military scholarship winner. I remember him." Her friend squinted. "You sure?" "Yeah, he gave a speech. Had the mayor crying." The officer either didn't hear or pretended not to. He paced slowly, then stood still, folding his arms. "Why are you really here this morning?" he asked. "I have a meeting," Jaden said. "With a retired general." "You said." "Yes." "Where?" Jaden pointed to the large building behind them. Tall, modern, impressive. "Top floor." "That building requires access clearance." "I have clearance." "Who gave it to you?" Jaden reached into his bag again, slowly, clearly, and pulled out a laminated access badge with the building's logo and a temporary visitor label marked with today's date. He handed it over. The officer examined it like it was counterfeit currency. Then finally, for the first time, he looked unsure. "Where'd you get this printed?" "I didn't. It was waiting for me at the front desk." The crowd's interest was peaking. Phones were definitely out now, some recording behind sunglasses or bags, others openly pointed in their direction. Jaden could feel it, that slow tilt of narrative, the energy starting to shift. He wasn't just a teen under suspicion anymore. He was a calm, composed figure standing in contrast to an officer beginning to look unsure. But Jaden didn't smirk, didn't gloat, just stood. A man in a gray suit approached from the building. He looked mid-50s, clean-shaven and brisk in movement. He glanced from the cruiser to Jaden, then spoke to the officer with assertive authority. "Is there a problem here?" The officer straightened. "Just verifying ownership and intent, sir. Got a report about suspicious parking. No report came through security. The man said quickly, and Mr. Brooks here is expected upstairs. He's our guest. The officer looked caught, slightly flustered. Just doing my job. I understand, the man said, but we vetted him days ago. His credentials are on file. He's not only welcome here, he was invited. The officer took a half step back. Understood. Jaden didn't say a word. He simply met the older man's eye, gave a small respectful nod, and accepted the access badge back when it was handed over. The officer looked at Jaden one last time. You've got everything in order. That's good. But next time, maybe say who you are up front. Jaden held the officer's gaze. Would it have changed anything? Silence. A pause. The cop didn't answer. Jaden slung his backpack over his shoulder again and turned toward the building. The older man who had intervened gave him a pat on the back as they walked. Behind them, the officer remained standing by his cruiser, watching unreadable. From the far side of the street, someone muttered, "He handled that better than most grown men." Another voice said, "About time someone with a badge saw what real discipline looks like." Jaden didn't look back. He didn't need to. He was already walking upward, toward the top floor, toward the meeting, toward the real reason he had come downtown this morning. And outside, the cruiser's engine turned over and slowly pulled away. Not with power, but with quiet retreat. The glass doors of the high-rise building slid open with a soft whisper, and Jaden stepped inside. The air inside was crisp, cooled, and filled with the scent of polished floors and quiet importance. But just as the lobby receptionist looked up to greet him, he heard the lower of the cruiser's engine again. It hadn't left. It had only circled the block. Jaden turned his head slightly. Through the glass wall behind him, he saw the same cruiser pulling back up to the curb. The officer hadn't let go. He stepped out of the car a second time, moving with more stiffness now, jaw locked, eyes sharp. Jaden sighed inwardly and looked at the receptionist with a brief, apologetic glance. "I'll be right back," he said, voice even. He walked back outside. The officer didn't wait for Jaden to speak. "I need you to stay right here for a moment. I've just requested backup." Jaden blinked. "Backup? Why?" "I've got to verify everything. We're in the middle of downtown, high-profile building, unconfirmed identity. For all I know, you forged those papers." Jaden exhaled slowly. "You spoke to Mr. Lennox. He just confirmed my appointment. My name is on the building's log. Verbal confirmation isn't official verification." The officer shot back. "We've had instances of social engineering before. People impersonating VIPs. Just need to be sure." Jaden resisted the urge to ask who exactly would impersonate a teen cadet to visit a general. He didn't respond. His silence, quiet as it was, seemed to irritate the officer more than protest would have. "You're awfully calm," the officer said, circling him once again. "Most people get defensive. I have nothing to hide. Or you're just trained that way. Military programs can be used as a cover too." That struck Jaden. Not the words themselves, but the casual way in which they were said, as if even his discipline could be twisted into suspicion. He opened his mouth slightly, then closed it again. His father had taught him long ago, when you're right and they doubt you, let your record speak, not your rage. The street was different now. The scene had grown. A small crowd had clearly formed, quiet, unspoken observers. Some were filming. Others just watched, unsure what to make of the unfolding moment. Jaden stood still, hand by his sides, eyes steady on the officer. Then, a crackle from the officer's radio. "Unit 47 confirmed location." He lifted the device. "Unit 47, corner of Elm and Lexington. Suspicious situation. Requesting secondary verification and potential vehicle tow." Jaden's brow furrowed. "Tow? You're towing my car." If I can't confirm a full chain of ownership on site, I have cause to impound it for further inspection, the officer said flatly. You're free to dispute that downtown later. I already proved it's mine. You showed documents, the officer emphasized, not proof. That stung. Not because Jaden feared the outcome, but because the truth was somehow still considered inadequate. The implication wasn't just that the car might not be his. It was that he wasn't who he claimed to be, that his confidence was suspicious, that his excellence was suspicious. Jaden looked down the street and saw a second cruiser pulling up, lights off but present. The second officer merged, older, broader, and slower in his stride. He approached and spoke quietly with the first officer, glancing over at Jaden a few times during the conversation. Jaden couldn't hear much, but he caught a few phrases. Teenager, claims to be Navy cadet. Lennox confirmed. Documents seem clean but too polished. Gut feeling, something's off. The second officer turned to Jaden. Mind telling me your full name? Jaden Carter Brooks. He said, clearly. You got a middle name? Carter. My mom's maiden name. The older officer nodded slowly. You from around here? No, sir. Originally from Atlanta. Currently attending a program out west. Visiting for mentorship weekend. He nodded again. Then, what's your cadet code? Jaden blinked. That wasn't a common question, but it was valid. BRK 5827. That seemed to catch the officer's attention. He scribbled it down in a notebook and stepped away to make a call. The younger officer, still standing nearby, folded his arms again. You could have made this easier, you know. Jaden looked at him. By what? Agreeing with your assumptions. By not acting smug. I've been respectful this entire time. You've been strategic. Jaden almost smiled. Strategic. It was meant as an accusation, but it sounded more like a compliment. He looked the officer in the eye, and for the first time spoke without any veneer. I've worked too hard for too long to be undone by someone else's assumptions. The officer's expression twitched, but he said nothing. Just then, the older copper turned. His face had changed, not warm, but alert, focused. Got confirmation, he said. Code checks out. Navy Academy candidate. Special program. You've got clearance through the DoD mentorship list. You're clean. Jaden nodded once. Thank you. The younger officer shifted slightly. Appreciate your patience, he said stiffly. Jaden looked at him, and for a long beat, just remained silent. Not because he didn't have anything to say, but because there was too much to say, and none of it would fit the moment. Finally, he turned toward the building again. He was halfway to the doors when he heard the older officer call out, Son. Jaden turned. The officer gave a nod. Not small, not dismissive. One of respect. You carry yourself well. Jaden simply replied, I was taught to. Then he stepped inside. Back in the lobby. The receptionist, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a warm demeanor, gave him a sympathetic look. That looked unnecessary. Jaden smiled gently. It happens. You want a bottle of water or something? He shook his head. No, thank you. She tapped the screen and nodded toward the elevator. They're waiting for you upstairs. Take the left lift. It's express. As the doors closed behind him and the numbers rose, Jaden felt the weight of the moment fall away, but only slightly. He wasn't upset. He wasn't even surprised. What he felt was resolved, because he knew what the next floor meant. Not just a meeting with a retired general. Not just another check-in. As the elevator ascended with a soft hum, Jaden kept his eyes on the glowing floor indicator. The polished metal walls reflected his composed face, but behind that calm was a long road, paved with quiet battles, silent judgments, and relentless self-discipline. The present may have challenged him, but it was the past that had prepared him. His memory drifted back. He was 10 the first time someone looked at him and locked their car doors. It was a spring afternoon in Atlanta. Jaden had just come out of the grocery store with his mother. She held 2 bags. He held one. A woman in an SUV nearby saw them approaching and hit the lock button 3 times. Click, click, click. Jaden heard it, felt it, even. His mother noticed too, but she didn't flinch. She just glanced at Jaden and said, "You don't need to react. Just keep walking. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You'll show them later when you succeed." That day, Jaden learned a lesson he would never forget. Reaction gives away power. Discipline keeps it. By middle school, Jaden was already different. Where most kids chase noise, he chased purpose. He was never the loudest in the room, but always the most focused. His notebooks were neat, his shoes always clean, and his answers always precise. Teachers praised him, but some classmates mocked him, calling him robot or off-brand Obama. He never responded. Not once. Not even when they laughed behind his back after gym. But everything changed when he joined junior ROTC. He still remembered the first day of drill practice. His boots were too stiff, his salute clumsy, and his form shaky. But when Sergeant Lewis, a tall, deep-voiced retired Marine, yelled instructions, Jaden listened like it was gospel. That year, he rose quickly through the ranks, not because he was the fastest or strongest, but because he listened harder than anyone else. And when Sergeant Lewis asked for volunteers to organize the Memorial Day event, Jaden stepped forward without hesitation. He planned a lineup, coordinated with city officials, and even wrote a speech for the cadets to present. The mayor personally commended the event. Jaden never sought praise, but he remembered how Sergeant Lewis clapped him on the shoulder afterward and said, "You don't talk much, Brooks, but when you move, people follow." That moment changed everything. By high school, Jaden was wearing medals on his chest and maintaining a 4.0 GPA. He still faced subtle slights, like when parents at award ceremonies assumed he was part of the cleanup crew, or when teachers triple-checked his test scores as if they were too high to be real. But Jaden didn't push back. He just kept winning. His scholarship came in the summer before senior year. A Department of Defense ROTC program had selected just 10 students nationwide, and Jaden was one of them. It wasn't just a financial boost. It was an endorsement from the top. He was assigned to a mentorship track under General Lennox, and as part of the program, he was issued a DoD-registered vehicle with clearance to park at partner federal buildings during mentorship visits. Yes, that parking spot. It wasn't luck. It wasn't privilege. It was earned through sweat, silence, and steel nerves. The car itself, a deep blue sports coupe, was his only indulgence. Not because he wanted to show off, but because he'd promised himself. If he ever got the scholarship, he'd buy something that made the years of being underestimated feel smaller. He paid for part of it with savings from summer jobs, and the rest was matched through a merit grant. Even the dealership questioned him. "You sure you can afford this?" the manager had asked. Jaden handed over the letter of clearance and said calmly, "Can we continue the paperwork?" They had. He drove off that day without even revving the engine loud. Back in the elevator, the doors opened to the 20th floor. Jaden stepped into the office lobby, all glass walls and brushed aluminum surfaces. A secretary gestured toward a hallway, and he followed it to the conference room. Inside, General Lennox was already seated, reviewing papers. The moment he saw Jaden, he smiled. "Cadet Brooks," he said, standing and extending a hand. "Good to see you again." Jaden shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, sir. Apologies for the delay. There was a situation outside." Lennox raised an eyebrow. "Everything all right?" Jaden paused. "Just a misjudgment. It's been resolved." Lennox studied him for a moment. "Did you handle it the way I'd expect you to?" Jaden nodded. "Yes, sir." "Then that's what matters." They sat. Over the next 20 minutes, they went over the mentorship schedule, project expectations, and his potential nomination for the Naval Academy. Lennox was thorough, but respectful. He didn't talk down to Jaden. He talked to him. That meant something. As the meeting wrapped up, Lennox leaned back. I read the field reports. The other cadets, they're brilliant, loud, charismatic. But they keep calling you the silent anchor. You make moves without making noise. Jaden gave a soft smile. That's how I was raised. Lennox stood and straightened his blazer. Well, let me tell you something most cadets don't hear. Keep being exactly who you are. Don't let the world drag you into shouting. Let your discipline speak. It'll echo louder than rage ever will. Jaden thanked him and exited the office with a sense of clarity. As he walked back down to the street level, memories of past judgments, slights, and assumptions floated through his mind, not with anger, but with quiet pride. Every stare, every whisper, every locked door had made him stronger. Now, the sun outside was beginning to shift lower in the sky. His car still sat where he'd parked it. The tow truck never came. The officers had cleared out. The crowd was gone. And as he approached the driver's side door, something caught his eye, a folded note tucked under the windshield wiper. He pulled it free and opened it. Written in neat, block letters were 4 simple words. You handled that well. No signature. No clue who left it. Jaden smiled. Jaden hadn't noticed how large the crowd had become until he saw a shimmer of light, the glint of a phone camera reflecting the sun. He turned his head slightly and realized at least a dozen people had paused along the sidewalk, some with phones raised, some just watching. His silence, his calm, had attracted more attention than shouting ever could. The officer, still gripping the radio at his shoulder, hadn't noticed a shift. His eyes remained fixed on Jaden, locked in his assumptions. But the crowd had changed. They weren't just curious anymore. They were aware. Across the street, a woman with a stroller whispered to a passerby, "That's the Brooks kid. Jaden, I saw him on the City Youth Council flyer last year." "Wait, really?" the man replied, squinting. "He's the one that organized a memorial fundraiser, right? The one who spoke at the veterans event." Another voice chimed in, closer to Jaden, a teenager, maybe 17, recording everything on her phone. "That guy isn't ROTC. He's not some random kid. He's one of the top cadets in the state." The murmurs grew. Jaden kept his posture straight. His documents were still in the officer's hand. He hadn't moved since handing them over. But the weight of judgment had begun to shift, not just between him and the officer, but in the eyes watching. The officer glanced up, finally noticing the shifting energy. His eyes darted toward the phones, the frozen stares. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, just for a second. Still, he spoke with authority. "I need you to stay right here. Do not move until my sergeant arrives." Jaden nodded calmly. "Yes, sir." The officer turned his back, stepping a few paces away to make another radio call. Jaden's eyes scanned the growing group. A man in a brown uniform, clearly a postal worker on break, stepped slightly forward. "He's not doing anything wrong," he said aloud, not confrontationally, but loud enough to be heard. "I've seen that car parked here before. He's got the clearance sticker on the dash. Look." Several heads turned. One woman leaned over to check the windshield. "Yeah, it's right there. Department of Defense seal." The officer turned around. "Please stay behind the line," he ordered, gesturing toward an invisible boundary. But the crowd wasn't backing up. They weren't aggressive, just curious now, and quietly supportive. Jaden spotted a familiar face in the mix, Ms. Dorsey, the librarian from his middle school. She hadn't changed much, still carried a tote bag filled with too many books, and wore reading glasses that always slid to the tip of her nose. She moved forward a little and called out, "Jaden Brooks?" Jaden looked toward her. Yes, ma'am. Her voice was steady. Don't worry. I remember your face. And I remember your character. You stay calm, sweetheart. We got eyes now. The officer frowned. Ma'am, please step back. I'm not interfering, she said, standing her ground. I'm just reminding him that we know who he is and who he isn't. Jaden didn't smile, but something in his shoulders softened. A younger boy near the front of the crowd, maybe 12 or 13, turned to his mother and asked, Why are they stopping him if he didn't do anything? The mother hesitated. Sometimes people don't see the full picture right away, but he's wearing a uniform. Doesn't that mean something? The boy asked. It should, she said softly. The officer seemed unsure now. Backup still hadn't arrived. His earlier certainty, his tone, had shifted into something less solid. He paced a few steps, checking his phone, glancing toward his cruiser, then back at Jaden. Jaden hadn't moved. He stood like he had during hours of drill, posture straight, feet evenly planted, gaze forward unshaken. The crowd continued to film, but now there was commentary, too. That kid tutored my nephew last year. He volunteers at the Veterans Center on weekends. He earned that car. I saw the article in the paper. Bought it with scholarship funds. He's got more discipline than most adults I know. The noise reached the officer. He finally approached Jaden again, voice lower now. You say this car is yours. You say the parking spot is authorized. Jaden nodded. The documents in your hand confirm that, sir. My badge number is on the DoD database. You can verify it. I already sent a request, the officer said, almost offensively. Jaden didn't reply. He didn't need to. A few moments passed. A distant siren could be heard, not blaring, just approaching. Backup was on the way. But by now, the moment had changed. What had begun as an assumed confrontation had shifted into something else. An exposure. A miscalculation. Then, a new voice emerged from the back of the crowd. Excuse me. It was clear, deep, and full of command. The kind of voice that cut through noise like a blade. A man stepped forward, tall, clean-shaven, wearing a navy blue suit with polished shoes. His badge was visible at his belt. A few in the crowd gasped softly. The officer stiffened. Captain Weller. Captain Weller held up a hand. I've been monitoring the channel. What's the issue here? The officer cleared his throat. I stopped this individual. Suspected unauthorized use of a government parking spot. I was awaiting document verification. Weller turned his gaze to Jaden, then back to the officer. And were his documents invalid? I haven't received confirmation yet, the officer replied. Weller took the papers from the officer's hand, scanned them quickly, then looked up at Jaden. You're Jaden Brooks? Yes, sir. Weller nodded slowly. I've heard of you. You're under General Lennox's mentorship program, correct? Jaden gave a small nod. The captain handed the documents back to Jaden personally. Everything checks out. This individual has full authorization to be here. The crowd let out a quiet breath, not quite a cheer, but a wave of visible relief. Someone clapped softly. Others lowered their phones. Weller turned to the officer. We'll talk later. Dismissed. The officer gave a stiff nod and walked back to his cruiser without another word. His posture wasn't angry now, just smaller. Weller looked at Jaden. You handled that with composure. Not many would have. Jaden nodded. Thank you, sir. Weller didn't say more. He just gave him a firm pat on the shoulder before stepping away to speak with someone on the radio. The crowd slowly began to disperse, though a few lingered. Some approached Jaden, shaking his hand or simply nodding in quiet respect. No loud praise. No drama. Just quiet acknowledgement. One older man, walking with a cane, paused before leaving. "Young man," he said, "I fought in 2 wars, and I've seen a lot of chaos. But watching you today, that was strength." Jaden met his gaze and gave a single respectful nod. "Thank you, sir." And then the street began to settle again. The moment had passed, but the impression remained. Phones would carry it to social media. Whispers would become conversations. Assumptions had been challenged. And Jaden, he was still standing.